That was my rant. Over to you. What do you think of that?
I'm. What I think about it is I will be back in a second with
Oh,
props.
oh, wow, props. Man alive, I didn't realise it was going to be this kind of Zoom. I'd have worn a better shirt. What am I supposed to do here? What are you guys up to these days? Are you alright? Let me know in the comments. What do you guys think of seagulls? We'll wait until he comes back. We've got all the time in the world. I might not cut this out. I've not decided yet. I'll think about it. It's quite cold here in the UK, actually. Oh no, we're back. Hello and welcome back, and that's right, it's myself. And who is this on the other side of the screen? This is SpaceRex. If you don't know who he is, you're not following NAS appropriately. And today we are going to talk about the things we wish Synology did, Synology have, or Synology includes. Before we go any further, in the highly unlikely event that you don't know who this chap is, introduce yourself, SpaceRex. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, I am basically NAS just kind of got a hobby that kind of got out of control for me, and now I just quit my job and do this full time, funny enough. So yeah, basically I got my first NAS for photography, and then it just kind of spiraled out of control, and now I've got a server in my guest bedroom and professionally consult on Synology.
I bet they chuffing love that when you have the guests come over. What's that? That's just a couple of 20 TBs. Don't worry, you'll sleep like a baby. So, do you know what? Today's video, nice and simple, guys. This is going to be us back and forthing the things that we wish, after all of the years of experience we have in Synology, were there. And I'm sure a number of you already in the comments are thinking about putting the things that you wish the brand included, supported, and more. I don't know the things that Will has picked, and he doesn't know the things I picked. There may be a bit of crossover, there may not be. This may turn into a very long video of two very angry men on a Friday afternoon from one of the people who hasn't had enough coffee. So, let's crack straight on. Over to you, Will. What's your first one?
By far, my first one is just I wish they would have Synology by far out of all the NASs is at least like the easiest to set up. But I really wish and they had an out of the box, just like I have no idea what I'm doing menu option that just clicks through and makes all your basic defaults that you need, because there's so many little things that I know from years of experience and just doing this all the time, where it's just like, oh, you got to do this, 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 and this. But in all reality, there's not one just like, oh, hey, set this up. I want to create a user for all my family members, and I want to have a volume for that, and I want to make sure all the things are checked properly. And just they do not have that. And so you end up with people. I've had clients who legitimately had 40 terabytes of photos in their recycling bin. And they called me because they're like, oh, I need to upgrade my NAS. I'm running out of space. He's got like 60 terabytes used. When 40 terabytes of that was just in the recycling bin, but there was no recycling bin empty task. So all these years, every time you hit delete, boom, they just went to the recycling bin and never got removed.
Do you know what? What you're talking about immediately reminds me of several NAS brands I've talked about over the last few years. One of them over here, the Amber X, right? Like even Acer Store, these brands have got the means to, as you say, turnkey. Acer Store's got an LCD panel on the front. You can turn it on, and seriously, 2 clicks, and it's ready to go. That even includes your storage pool. The fact that Synology doesn't have that, you're absolutely right. They are one of the simplest out there to install. But even then, it's that whole not seeing the wood for the trees thing. I'll be straight with you. That is not on my... I kind of wish it was on my list, but it's not on my list because... You're right. We spend so much time doing these things ourselves that on a lot of my videos, I will talk about all the NAS brands that I cover here on the channel. And all too often, I'll go, oh, Synology is the most user-friendly. And then people will watch that and go, well, that sounds easy. I've still got my Nokia. And then they'll try and set up that NAS. And then they'll message me and say, you lying son of a... Which isn't nice. But no, straight with you. Boom. So there's another one, everyone. We wish there was a... We call them turnkey solutions, but that's not strictly turnkey for an unknown newbie user. I mean, my first one, and if one of you hasn't put this in the comments already, you're doing it wrong. Synology Photos, thing recognition. Where the hell has that gone? That's, I mean, this, I don't have a reason. I've spoke to Synology, I've spoke to so many people. There is no logical reason why Synology Photos does not include thing recognition. Synology Moments had it. Everyone else has got it. Google has it. The AI itself is borrowed. Very few of these NAS brands produce their own AI algorithm. It's obviously borrowed or paid for or on loan or subscribed or whatever. the fact that there's a lack of thing recognition doesn't just extend to the home user that really wants to know the difference between a cheeseburger and a tree. It's the people that have got decades of photos and they are looking for something specific. And the best option they got in Synology Photos at the moment is they can sort by date, they can sort by the aperture and the ISO of the camera. They can see faces and they can scrape the metadata for the location. That's it. I mean, have you ever heard, like from your talks to Synology and even clients or whatever, have you met anyone that's given an actually good reason why thing recognition is no longer in Synology Photos?
That was one of the things that a lot of people I feel like got really, especially professional photographers, when they went from like Photo Station and Moments and DSM-6 to now all this one application for Synology Photos, it in a lot of ways was a lot better. But then they also stripped out a lot of really key features that a lot of people have built into their workflows, like, hey, we're just not going to support that, and maybe we'll put it back. At least they did add location data back in, but I still don't think they've got a map view. And a lot of people, I've always tagged my DSLR photos with geolocation because I love being able to just like, oh, hey, this is where it was years ago. Let's pull up a map and see all the photos I took around here, and that's always fun. And they just don't have that, even though they had that back in Moments.
Synology Photos thing recognition. I'm sure at least one of you from Synology, HQofficial.com, etc., is watching this. Give us a reason why thing recognition is gone. And on that note, over to you. What's your next one?
So this one, I am cheating because it's actually coming, but it's something that has been driving me crazy for years, and that is full volume encryption. One of the worst things that manage on Synology is encryption, because when you're a business, you pretty much want to certainly encrypt your data just as default. The problem is so many people, it's pretty much impossible because, businesses love their long folder structures and all these file names. And so there's a 128 character limit on a path name. I think it's about that. And then encryption just doesn't work. And so it's just so kludgy on how to set that up. Thankfully, DSM 7.2 is coming out with full volume encryption, though from what I've heard...
In beta first. Don't forget that. It's coming out in beta first. Still waiting.
And it's still not going to be migratable, unfortunately. So you're going to have to completely blow away your volume and reset up the entire thing, which is going to be a pain. But at least they're finally adding that in because it is such a crucial feature, especially when you're expanding all these different apps. Having that limitation and not being able to see your previous version of snapshots when you enable encryption, it just really hamstrung everything, I feel like.
I mean, when I was watching the presentation, I mean, like we were all sort of watching it in November, December, I was aware that Synology didn't have volume encryption on there, but I thought it had been rolled in like 7 and 7.1. I mean, we're talking 2-3 years ago when I was, again, let's call them out, QNAP again. I'm sure we're going to do a video. I'm sure someone in the comments is going to say you guys should talk about Synology and QNAP in the future, but QNAP have had that for so long that I, at the beginning, assumed it was always there. And the fact it wasn't, as you say, if you don't have it at the beginning, a lot of people aren't prepared to roll back their whole setup. It's not too little too late. It's better to have it than not have it at all. But no, you're right. It's a very odd thing for it to roll out this late. And even when it comes out in beta, no one's going to jump on the beta with their critical, mission critical data. No one's doing that. So no, even you're right. It's not really cheating because let's face it, it's not going to land until Q2, Q3, summer, autumn. I mean, okay, my next one. And again, I'm going to steal your words. This is sort of cheating, but hear me out, right? M2 NVMe's as storage pools. Now, the way it's been deployed is not good because it's true. Synology now does support this on 2 whole devices, the 723 and 923. But the way they've deployed it has not been great. First and foremost, no old devices have got it. So again, whether you got your 920 running on a Gen 2 rig or you're running a DS1522, which is basically a 923 with another bay slapped on the side, they've done that and you can't enable it in those. You also have got it throttled. Like Eddie went in with Putty for me and then found out they were throttled to 3.1, which, again, unofficially, Synology have told us, and by that I mean lots of people connected with Synology have told me that is to do with temperature concerns and the raising of the temperature on those M2 NVMe's. Not good enough. And then you've got the idea that you can't boot from those M2 NVMe's. So although you can install some applications, a lot of people are going to want, the ground level, hypervisor level, whatever you want to call it, running from those M2s. And then it's the fact that even if you go beyond SSD, when I did a video with Black Void a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about QNAP versus Synology. And I was talking about how Synology have got these great flash solutions, but they're all SATA or SAS SATA, but they don't have their own Synology branded SAS SSD, but they also have compatibility lists that say you can only use predominantly our own SSDs. So they've got no SAS or NVMe flash enclosures, and the support of storage pools with utilizing M2 NVMe's is quite pitiful. That is something I want to see change. And if Synology say only, all of our future releases will let me use the storage pools, great. Tell the last 20 years of, well, let's be realistic, 5 years of users that. It's just bad news. I mean, for yourself, I saw you did a review. You did a review for the 923. I'm not sure if your 723 review's up, but did you test the pools?
Yeah, I mean, that was the problem is you get great latency out of them. That's the beauty of the NVMe protocol is it is just so connected to the CPU. You don't have to waste time going through the entire SATA protocol. So basically the same flash chip is like 10 times less latency just using NVMe. So it's phenomenal for something like video editor or really like any really like running VMs on it, everything like that. But then it's hamstrung to that 3.1 protocol. So it's so slow. So even if you've got them as RAID 0, you're maxing out at like 800 megabytes per second, maybe.
Yeah.
And it's just not usable. And that's the thing I've heard from Synology as well is, we're worried about temperature control. I don't know of anybody else who's so concerned about that they are absolutely hamstringing every single unit from having it. It just seems like a half-baked solution. And I know that when you drop a PCIe expansion card, anytime you drop something from PCIe, the system may crash. But we've been running M.2 NVMe's for a very long time, and I don't think I've had a single computer crash. I just don't get why this is so much more complicated in these boxes than on your home PC or anything like that, which probably is running way harder than just these units.
And the other thing with the M2 NVMe's, of course, is yes, they're utilizing them in chassis that didn't originally, or that weren't originally designed for these M2s to have that much active airflow, but for the dissipation of heat from, say, heat sinks attached to the SSDs. But I would argue, I mean, I agree with you. I don't agree with on the PCI drop, system crash element, but SSDs, in my experience, during read-write heavy caching, get a lot hotter in those operations because they're high, IOP level, not sequential blob data, than they would as storage pools. I find that very unusual that if the argument was temp, because remember, it was unofficial, it seems really odd to me if that is the reason. But, over to you. Next.
All right. So this is going to be some of my rants from trying to set up specific workflow from clients.
I love this.
Carry on. Getting comfortable. So Synology Drive, phenomenal for, I work with a lot of videographers and photographers who have basically one person who's got the main NAS, and then they're spread out all over the country or the world. But the workflow for getting clients using Synology Drive sucks in some case. It is really, really, really good if you want to share everything with somebody. But if you're trying to use Synology Drive shared with me, essentially allowing a user to say, okay, I'm the guy who owns the business. I want this guy to edit this video project, and I want it downloaded to his machine and be able to, he edits it and then drops it back. They've got a great thing called Shared with Me, and it's so great. They basically see it in a list of everything. The problem is there's no way to enable automatic downloads. And so when you're going out and you're, as a business owner, trying to say, okay, you work on this project, it'd be great to be able to say, okay, I'm just going to share it with you, and automatically it's going to download to your PC, and now you're going to be able to edit it. But no, there's no way to enable automatic downloads for Shared with Me. You have to go through this really confusing web portal to do it. And I wish there was just a way to say, hey, automatically download everything. And that would solve so many workflows I've had where it's going in and making it so much more complicated than it needs to be. just because you can't do automatic downloads of Shared with me. Very small thing to add.
You mentioned it is technically a small thing, but it still comes down to it's an inconsistency across the different way things are shared. And it is one of those things that when you're trying to talk to people about using, your third-party cloud, your Dropbox, your Google, your whatever, and you're trying to explain to them the advantage of their private server, and then you show them sharing a file, and in some cases they go, well, that's terribly convoluted. Or as you say, there is that ability to download all or nothing mentality sometimes on the way it is structured. But yeah, that's a good point. Again, not on my list. I'm really surprised we've made it this far into the video. You guys in the future watching this and you're looking at the time bar, however long is this? This might go on for days, but I'm kind of surprised we've not crossed over yet. Okay, let's see if you've got this one. Right. Client-side AI surveillance on more devices. Where the hell is that? Like, don't get me wrong, the DVA 3221 and the 19 before it, the DVA 1622, they've got those AI protocols, object person counting, line definite, all of these great license plate registration, a thing recognition, where the bloody hell is that? And they've got those great services. One of those NAS is powered by a GPU card, which, by the way, the HDMI port has just been covered over for no reason, but that's a side topic. And the DVA 1622 is an Intel Celeron non-GPU equipped box, but it has AI-powered surveillance tasks available to it. Therefore, what makes that device any different from a DS720? Other than the HDMI output, which was always possible, it's just Synology didn't want to go for local HDMI out. That's fine. That isn't the debate. But the idea that you've got these great AI services and you can't use them on a DS920, 720, 723, any of those NAS devices that have got either integrated graphics CPUs or at least a bit of horsepower to get the job done. And move on forward from that, we're seeing more and more NAS server, even PC devices that are running with neural processing unit, NPUs, or support of Google's TPU, Coral card. That thing's like $25. There you go. I said it, not Nicker. I got there. I know the lingo. And it's really annoying to me that this service is locked away to those AI-powered boxes for deep video analysis. And then they talk about their new cameras. Yum, yum, great. Because I am genuinely chuffed that Synology, a lot of lingo today, I'm genuinely chuffed about Synology releasing these new cameras because they're the first NAS brand to release cameras. And I don't know how long people have been contacting you and your services saying, I need a NAS for surveillance. What cameras do I recommend? And it's really tough to recommend cameras when the brands themselves go, we've got a list of 6,000 cameras. Good for you. So it's great they've launched these cameras. It's great these cameras have got hardware AI, hardware on board that can be harnessed by surveillance station to run AI services. But I've got a dozen Reolink cameras over here that do that, but I can't use that hardware on my Synology surveillance station setup. And I've also got NASes with enough hardware to run an AI task. Yet, here we are, I still can't use those services. It's really annoying.
And at the minimum, I mean, for the businesses Synology really wants, why not just include a PCIe sliding card that has basically the GPU required for a surveillance station? Because so many of the XS Plus rack units have two GPU slot or two PCIe slots in them, and so Synology loves selling their proprietary cards to have an entire new workflow. That would be such an easy add-on to say. I mean, they could charge a lot of money for it because you're going into rack mount business units to sell a GPU that you slot in, and boom, now your NAS that was just running your file server now has the power to do all your AI processing for all your cameras. It just does not make sense where I feel like that would be such an easy add-in. It may be a airflow issue, but those rack mounted units have so much airflow anyway. It seems like it'd be so easy for them to have that GPU add-in card, and now boom, all these massive rack mount units with 40 drives in them now have the ability to also have GPU processing and AI processing for all the cameras, because that's what surveillance station is all about right now, is really going for those massive businesses who have deployments of hundreds of cameras. It'd be awesome to be able to say, okay, I need to do line counting on 7 of these cameras. Let's just slot in a GPU or 2 to do that processing for us.
I mean, again, you mentioned the GPU upgrade cards, like, again, when we look at there's a couple of other NAS brands, I'm not going to name them, but I'm sure they're labels behind me. They have support of graphics cards. Synology wouldn't have to support 20, 30, 50 different graphics cards to support their own branded, labeled, ready cards. And again, even if they don't do that, those M2 like upgrade cards, that Coral, the TPU card, genuinely is $20 to $30, and it does the job. It enables face counting. It's not the most comprehensive, but it's onboard AI lifting the process away from the system. But that's just my beef. Who knows? Hopefully, we'll be looking at the cameras later in the next few months here on the channel, so we'll find out if some things have changed. But over to you. What's next?
Yeah.
I'm poised with my pen.
Before we get off that, yeah, the cameras you touched on, such a true statement. It's one of the reasons I honestly have been recommending a lot of people go Unifi, just because Unifi has that guaranteed experience across the board where you don't have to fiddle around and figure out every single thing. With Unifi, you buy the Unifi NVR and the Unifi cameras, and they're powered by a Unifi switch and a Unifi application portal. It's all just completely linked together. And in all reality, you get a lot better quality out of that just because you've got a streamlined experience.
Efficient, yeah.
They are expensive, but it at least works. It just works, and you don't have to worry about that. So for small businesses and just home users, it makes a lot of sense because it's so tightly integrated. It's kind of dummy proof. And there's also a really good kind of culture around that. One of my bonus ones where when you recommended this video, I just started typing away every single time.
Yep. We have got a problem. That's what we've got. Jesus.
Just absolutely went off. But one of my other ones was I would love Synology to spend the time to build a Homebridge plugin. Basically allows you to bring all your surveillance cameras into Apple's HomeKit. There are already a few in there, and it just seems like it'd be a pretty easy thing for them to pay somebody a few $1,000s to build this plugin, because a lot of users already have done more or less ones. And then you can say, oh, hey, look, you want to get all your cameras on your Apple ecosystem and show them up in Apple Home? Boom. Now you can just do it pretty easily. You can run it in Docker right on one of your Synologies. And I think that'd be a great add-in.
I think now with the bridging with sorry no I was going to mention, like with the Apple stuff, I think there's always this issue with Apple products about the licensing, that it's really tough for them to bridge it. But as you say, there are numerous third-party, GitHub kind of add-ons there, even unofficial. You go to, what is it, Syno community, some of the stuff on that Syno community, because some of it, you look at it and you go, no one's ever going to touch that app, no one's going to risk their data. But some of them, as you say, some of this open stuff is just plain necessary. But no, cool. I would just say, was that your pick, or have you got another one lined up?
Oh, I've got another one. But yeah, I mean, a guy made an awesome one for Unifi, where it's literally one-click deployment. You create a user for it, and it just finds all of your cameras, finds all the detections. It has better documentation than a lot of Unifi features itself, and you can just see the doorbell camera. And anytime somebody rings my doorbell, it pops up on my TV. It's just like, and just some guy goes, you know what? I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this right, and went way too in depth on it and made a perfect application just out of his own passion.
I was going to say, with Unifi, that's one of those things on this channel that I know of it, but I don't. It's one I cover so much stuff here. It's one of the subjects. There's about 4 or 5 topics here on the channel that sit there floating around, waiting to be dealt with, and they're so big I can't do them in a small way. But no, everything I've seen of it just blows me away every time I see it, and it's the fact that, yes, the base package is premium, but the amount of homebrew, the amount of customization that's floating around from people, as you say, in their own time, is just staggering, really. It's like the early days of Android in that respect. But no, sorry, fire away. Yep.
All right, what are we on? 7 now? Okay. And we still have, you touched close on one of my topics, but
wow, okay,
that's my number 4, but it was different enough where we're good. My number 7 is to actually build a WireGuard client built into Synology. So Synology just has not done a great job with VPNs. They at least have an easy use package, but then all of a sudden, oh, hey, because of the certificates, now it's really hard to import a open VPN certificate with certain clients. Or L2TP over IPsec, which was great until Windows dropped support for it. And now, because it's a Cisco protocol, like every business that I had using L2TP over IPsec, all of a sudden, if all their Windows users just stop being able to authenticate, because Cisco goes, hey, Windows, you got to stop doing this. You can only use this new protocol for us. So many things. I think it would be absolutely awesome for Synology to build a one-click solution for a WireGuard VPN client where it just works. You forward the port of WireGuard, and then you're able to just say, okay, send this client certificate, and they launch a Synology client on Mac, Windows, Linux, whatever, on the phones, everything that just connects in using WireGuard because it's a
That's
open
the,
protocol. It's great, and so
I mean,
many guys are doing that, but Synology just isn't, and it make the entire VPN setup so much easier.
there's 2 points there. Like, so firstly, well, I think we have to at least acknowledge that Synology is always going to kind of champion its own VPN services and its own stuff. And the level of support for, not even just VPN providers, but, client software that works in that tunnel protocol has always been slightly reluctant on their platform. The other thing is the amount of WireGuard support outside of Synology on other brands is another one of those areas where you go, well, they're doing it. And I don't know why they like turn their nose up a little bit at stuff like that. Again, I could have made another whole list of certain apps and services, like even the installation of something like Plex, which is a no-brainer. Yes, they've got Plex on their app center. You definitely get the impression during modern installations of Plex that the Synology's going, all right, if you must install it, okay. So next up, this one's a real short one, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be one that I'm going to get some heat for in the comments below because it's not popular. Sorry, my laptop is quite close to the fan for the laptop's kicking up. I'm sorry if you're getting that feedback.
I can hear it now.
Write-only cache. Where the hell is it? Now, write-only cache is niche, but frankly, so is NAS. NAS is niche within a niche within a niche within a niche, okay? But write-only cache, I know a lot of users that want to use that. Now, of course, let's discuss the SSD-shaped elephant in the room. Write cache, of course, if your SSD, if you have a power failure or the SSD corrupts, the controller fails, whatever, you lose your data. Okay, that is the risk. But a lot of users will have like RAID-enabled drives there within there. They'll be running a UPS that will protect them from that instant power failure that could kill that write. Then you've got other operations built into the build-up of the system that can prevent those things becoming a black or white, death or life situation there. And it's the idea that if I've got one SSD, I can go read cache or I can go home. That's my option. The idea that if I've got two SSDs, I can go read cache or read and write cache, give me write cache. Because there are users, particularly those users who are running 2-stage or even 3-stage archival storage, where they will value that increased performance that write caching provides. Read caching isn't for everyone. And it's the idea that read cache is being so heavily prioritized. And yes, write cache has an inherent downside in terms of failure of the system, but there are ways and means around that. I would like to have two M2 NVMe's that, by the way, I can't use as storage pools, but also use them as my write cache area. I mean, yourself, do you hear many people wanting write cache on its own?
So I deal with, by far, the most amount of people I deal with are photographers, videographers, who really, I tell them, don't even bother with read-write cache. Just stripe it as RAID 0. Read only because of the performance. You want those random reads, which is the other thing is the nice thing about BTRFS and Synology is generally the way it works is writes are very rarely random, except for when you are actually running a VM. VMs are really the time where you actually get those really random writes, and disks just absolutely chug whenever you got random writes. It is so slow because they just can't do caching, and they're like, all right, we got to write this down, and then you get fragmented pools. Instead, if you could have just a sequential amount of data going to the disks, not only are your disks now going to be a lot less fragmented, you're also going to have a lot better performance when you're dumping data to them, and you really get that huge advantage over running a DAS. Is with a NAS, you actually can have a hard drive amount of storage with the speed and latency of an NVMe drive if everything's performed properly. Maybe not NVMe, maybe SATA, but still really fast. And I think that would be really useful. And once again, very close to one that I've got coming up. Different enough where I'm not going to talk about it yet.
Well, do you know what? I've said everything I've got to say about write cache because I know it's not everyone's cup of tea and everyone will immediately talk about the failure. So over to you next.
So for me, photo indexing for Synology Photos would be absolutely awesome. I would love to be able to point to any folder on the NAS and have it index photos. This is just, I have this conversation about once a week with a photographer, probably more than that, where I'm like, look how great this is, and get it set up where like they can have an iPad and just like on a shoot, pull up headshots that they like and what the client want to use, because it's great. It's got Lightroom keyword tagging, so you can just pull out all your keywords for photographers who have that. And they're like, okay, great. Well, let's just set up on my entire library of exported photos that are in this folder. I was like, you can't. You have to move
Yeah.
to a specific file, and it just breaks all these workflows. It would be so
Do,
nice to say, okay, on your done projects, filter out just the JPEGs and put that up, and it just does not make any sense why we cannot have that after all these years.
do you know what? You saying that immediately, I realized it's a little bit of Stockholm syndrome that I've got because I'd forgotten how angry I used to get in the photo apps that I couldn't get breadcrumb file folder. I'd got so I feel like an abused husband or wife that I've forgotten just how annoyed I used to be about that. And I remember when they talked about Synology Photos and they were talking about, yes, you can have folder access. And then when they brought it out, it was, yes, you've got folder access of just this one drive folder. And then you were like, no, that's not what you said. And you're right. I'd completely forgotten that was a thing that everyone else just kind of went, yeah. Now, if Synology could counter argue and go, well, due to our intelligent caching algorithm, we're making sure that we can index as quick as possible. We've got everything hard coded to that specific folder to make sure everything's nippy. No, horse nonsense. I've never had a good excuse for that. I just no. Do you know what? I'd completely forgotten that was a thing.
Yeah.
But do you know what? My next one. Do you know what? This is another one. I think Synology would defend, but I don't think many other people would. HybridShare. Why does it only support Synology C2? That really bugs me because they weren't the first to bring the idea of bolt-on localized appearance cloud or bucket or blob storage, remote. They weren't the first to roll it out. I think they were technically the third. When they brought it onto their platform, I was really, really excited for it before I found it was only going to be their cloud services. The reason I was annoyed about that was, as good as it is for the data on that C2 platform to now be accessible by the Synology and all of its apps and services with the appearance of local, and all those apps can run it like it's really there. I can do that anyway because I've got a Synology. So that's not what that is to me. Yes, it's going to be really nice to have that hybrid cloud storage area there that I'm communicating with, and all of my other users are connected with that C2, but it's still absolutely infuriating to me that I can't use my few terabytes of Dropbox. I can't use my huge area of Google Drive that I may have got with a license, maybe with my Office, my Office 365 and my Google Workspace. I mean, do you use C2 in your own personal setup?
So I actually pay for C2 for my backup of basically my business files just because of everybody I've tested, it's the most resilient for using hyper backup. And I really, really, really wanted to use C2 for a lot of video production houses who have people all over the country and in some cases all over the world who don't have that good of bandwidth because it makes a ton of sense. It'd be awesome to be able to upload to one cloud and then have that go out to every single one of the other Synologies and just have it all locally like that. That would be phenomenal. And there's so many issues with it. You can't have a file more than 50 gigabytes in there. And you also can't actually pin a folder locally and have it continuously download that folder without somebody first clicking on it. It would be so nice. And they could charge a premium for it if they just had it where all of a sudden you've got everybody downloaded from this cloud and you get full speed downloads to one or two folders. And that way you can say, yeah, this is expensive, but it allows you to unlock these new workflows for these businesses who are going to be buying hundreds of terabytes of storage just to make this work. There are so many little things that could make it phenomenal for massive video production houses across who need to work in these massive organizations across the world. But that inability to download files more than 50 gigs or also have everything just download automatically and not okay, once you click on a file, if it's a 10 gig file for video, you're in trouble. It'd be so nice to just have that downloaded on demand not on demand, ahead of time. And it would make so many workflows and get the Synology's the customer it really wants, which are those massive video production houses who have hundreds of terabytes and are fine paying $6 a terabyte a month for all the storage.
Do you know what? I'll be straight with you. I do come up with another point about C2 later on. Spoiler alert. But yeah, I mean, I was asking about you, and I didn't know about the 50 gig file thing, by the way. Thanks for that. I use Synology C2 Surveillance personally, and that to me, I really, really like that. I'm happy with only using their platform. I'm happy with that. But it was the fact that HybridShare, I couldn't use those other platforms for it. And as you say, other platforms actually provide the things that you just described, a number of them. Yes, that is because that is their raison d'etre. It's their main thing they do. But at the same time, it does seem a weird omission. Quick break in recording there because the internet didn't want to play the game. Over to you, Will. Next up. Come on, what's next?
So number 5 is going to be one where I'm going to get very passionate about because it's a very small issue that's only for very specific use cases. It'd be incredibly easy to fix, but breaks so many setups I would love to be able to do. And that is going to be multi-threaded uploads and downloads
Fair play.
for using Synology Drive and Synology Drive Share Sync, because it drives me insane trying to explain why all of a sudden you can't get these fast speeds, even though both people have a gigabit network. You can't get these fast speeds because of latency. So before I go into this, I feel like I need to explain what this is. So whenever you're copying a file over the Atlantic Ocean or really anything far, you have latency on there. And so if you're doing one file after the other, every single packet has to be acknowledged, and then you send over the next one. So even though you have a 1 gigabit upload and download speed on both networks, that does not mean you're able to fully use that, because 85% of the time, the network's not going to be doing anything because it's just waiting on the acknowledgement of the other packet before it sends the other one. The way around this is to do multiple uploads at the same time and still wait. And still, instead of waiting for one file to upload and then do another one, you upload 10 files at a time. And Synology Drive already kind of does this, but there's no way to set how many tasks you want. And so it is important to set your tasks because you don't want to overload a system. But if you just exposed the ability to say, okay, I'm fine doing 50 upload tasks at the exact same time, it would change the way people are able to use these setups, because it would allow for everybody to send all these files over at the exact same time. It is one of those things where just the ability for Synology to put in the UI, hey, for Synology Share Sync, I am okay uploading 15, 20 files at the same time, just like they have in Cloud Sync, would mean that you could have these great workflows. I have literally had to set up for a lot of people for that fast stuff, where essentially they use Cloud Sync to upload to Dropbox and then Dropbox it back down to the other Synology, just because you can multi-thread in Cloud Sync, but you cannot multi-thread in Synology Drive Sync. It would be so easy to just have the direct connection and have that in there, because it already does it. You just can't specify how many threads it works. It would be so easy for them to add in. And it's just one of those things where it would bring out all these phenomenal workflows where you've got these video production houses who are syncing all these files across to all these different other users and being able to go at full speed. It would mean that you're able to essentially saturate your entire network connection, even if you're going from Asia to the United States, because you're uploading 30 files at the same time. It would be so easy for them to add, and it would make them the king of video production. But instead, you have to use these kludgy systems that just do not work well, when it would be so easy to add in. I apologize for being very passionate.
No. Do you know what I was going to say?
So many worlds.
It's one of those things where a lot of the processes, and particularly you see it when there's stated performance, bandwidth, transfer rates, whatever, I always feel sorry for the sequential data user, the big, bulky data user, because they go, cool, I'm going to send that 25 gig raw. No, you're not. Get comfortable, pal. And you're right, it's one of those things that's comfortably overlooked. And I think, as you mentioned, video production houses, anything to do with post-production, really, even raw these days, with photo editing, that data is data is bigger than it's been for a very long time, as it always is, Moore's Law, blah, blah, blah. But it's the very idea that the means of remote sending is so antiquated by comparison. Yes, if you're running VMs, there is a lot of micro data there. There is a little bit more random, but also it is very, very small. So that kind of ready, it's done. It's fine. So no, you're absolutely right. I think the thing that bums me out the most about this is I had this conversation 3 years ago in Poland Street in London. It's like near Soho. It's like a big video production. All of the TV production for the bulk of the UK and some of the Netherlands stuff is done there. And they all wanted this. And I was like, don't worry, it's probably going to come soon. It is, isn't it? God, that was depressing. Anyway, right. So I've got a few things left here, but I'll be straight with you. They're mostly hardware. So I'm going to let you pick. What do you want, hardware or software?
We've not done hardware in a while. Let's do it.
Where the hell is 2.5 GBE? Where the hell is it? I mean, bish bash. Don't get me wrong. I don't know how you're going to respond to this, because I don't know if you're one of the contingent of users that will say, I don't use 2.5 GBE. I just jump straight to 10. 2.5 GBE is a fad. Everything's 1 GBE, you get 10 GBE. I get it. I understand. 2.5 GBE is still comparatively niche compared to 1 and 10. However, with lots of things, client hardware arriving with 2.5 GBE at the same price as 1 GBE, with routers from internet service providers arriving with 2.5 GBE, with
Synology's own router.
Oh my God, all of those devices are running with 2.5 GBE, client hardware, desktop, PCs, laptops, all of these things, Wi-Fi 6 exceeding that of standard one, saying to me, no one's really using 2.5 GBE, I don't mind, skip straight to 10. Some people don't want to skip to 10, and also skipping to 10 isn't just a case of sticking on a Thunderbolt adapter and then going home. It's not, because you have to update the rest of the clients, and 2.5 GBE you can update, and even 5 GBE you can update to for 25 to 50 quid. That's right, I said quid, let's keep it level. And it just really winds me up that 2.5 GBE, they've flat out refused to upgrade towards it. And yes, I'm not stupid. 10 GBE is better, but it's not for everyone. And if you are running a new MacBook, and a lot of the MacBooks that have got Thunderbolt, and they're lovely and slim, and they're wonderful, and they weigh about 8 ounces and a feather. I don't know what an ounce is. But it winds me up that 2.5 GBE has just been no on their platform. There was that DS1620XS that was revealed in 2019. I'm a hoot at parties. And that had 4 2.5 GBE ports. Man, I was excited. I went to bed at 11:30 that night. But, roll on, the thing never came out. It got rolled in with 10 GBE, which is great. But the number of users that are wound up that they can get a NAS, that they can connect to their router, and theoretically have a faster connection with a remote internet cloud than the thing they are leaning their laptop on top of is a joke. Wow, that was my rant. Over to you. What do you think of that?
What I think about it is I will be back in a second with props.
Oh, wow, props. Man alive, I didn't realise it was going to be this kind of Zoom. I'd have worn a better shirt. What am I supposed to do here? What are you guys up to these days? Are you alright? Let me know in the comments. What do you guys think of seagulls? We'll wait until he comes back. We've got all the time in the world. I might not cut this out. I've not decided yet. I'll think about it. It's quite cold here in the UK, actually. Oh no, we're back.
This right here is so annoying to use. This right here is
I've got one of them somewhere.
Adapter. The heat sink on it is massive, drops so much heat, and because if you run it hard for hours, it will overheat and fail unless you got it perfectly on a surface. Right here, lovely 2.5 gigabit, works just with USB-C, does not have to be Thunderbolt 3, and it is just the size difference for them is huge. I love 2.5 gigabit because you can do pretty much everything, just like, unless you're doing massive file transfers. I don't really know of a lot of workflows that really require 10 gigabit that cannot work on 2.5 gigabit. Video editing, if you're doing more than 2.5 gigabit speeds out of a NAS, that's 300 megabytes per second. It's pretty rare to actually get either rendering or playback that actually pulls more than 300 megabytes per second. And it's just, this is so much cheaper, easier, lighter, way easier to work with than this honking thing that you have to put on your desk. And then it also takes up so hard to get them because during the pandemic, one of the things that just
the PD, chips.
Nobody could get 10 gigabit add-in cards, but 2.5 was totally fine. It is such a difference. And everything I've read is it's like a 70-cent difference for a manufacturer to put in 2.5 gigabit versus 1 gigabit in a device. And it's the one thing you want to make sure has the
Yeah.
fastest speed is the 2.5 gigabit ones.
Mm.
I will say at the same time, nobody uses 2.5 gigabit, and I don't know why, but I really, really, really just wish they would add that because it's a no-brainer. The cost of it is so slim.
Where is it?
It drives me crazy.
You mentioned 2.5G, and just for the naysayers at the in the comments that most likely will say none of my devices have got 2.5 GBE, newsflash: you can attach one of these to your PC or your Mac or whatever. You can attach one of these to your NAS. Congratulations, you just spent 50 quid, and your network is 2.5 times what it was. That's not a big spend. Yes, to 10 GBE. There's an adapter for the 923. Stick a 10 GBE in there. That adapter, which by the way started at 129, is now 139, is now 149, and is getting obscenely expensive because of the shortage of hardware components. And those Thunderbolt adapters, as you say, that little power delivery transistor on there, the reason Thunderbolt 3 and Thunderbolt 4 tech is so delayed right now. Like, it's a no. I'm going to stop moaning. Over to you, because I swear I could do this whole video on that. What's your next point?
So this is a bonus one that I totally forgot to write down, but it drives me crazy. Wi-Fi adapters. We upgraded from DSM 6.2 to 7 and lost the ability to have Wi-Fi add-in. Drove me crazy because so many people out there do not have wired houses and instead have the beauty of Synology is it's tiny, it's quiet. The only thing you ever hear with Synology is the sound of the hard drives. So if you put SSDs in there, they're whisper quiet. Great selling point. But the problem is if you do not have a wired connection, now you have to access your NAS over Wi-Fi basically by plugging it into the router downstairs, and then you're just hoping for Wi-Fi up in your office. When what I set up for people all the time is, okay, we will buy one of those Wi-Fi extenders, turn off the extender function of it, and basically just use it as a Wi-Fi to Ethernet adapter to plug in back to Synology, and then you plug that into your computer. And that is just drives me crazy when it would be so easy to just say, okay, instead add in a Wi-Fi card, make it really easy, a Wi-Fi USB stick. And now for the internet, you use Wi-Fi, and then you've got a direct connection from the back of your Synology into the back of your laptop. It would be a no-brainer rather than having these convoluted setups that are just unnecessary. And the drivers are there. Even if they just supported a single Wi-Fi USB stick, make sure that one works.
I was going to say, I'm not looking for a ghost in this room. What I'm looking for is my Wi-Fi 6 USB adapter. Knocks around, it's from D-Link, it's 35 nicker. Wi-Fi 6 connected, bang, done. USB wireless, and again, now we're talking 1.2 gigabits or 1.8 on a dual lane Wi-Fi, dual band Wi-Fi. Again, exceeding that of traditional LAN. The argument of Wi-Fi adapters before was when if you're using an ACN or whatever, you've got 300 megabits, which is nothing. But that's really not the case anymore due to that 5 gigahertz band. And now, with those new Wi-Fi 6 and even Wi-Fi 6E, it cannot be much longer before someone like Realtek knocks out an adapter for USB to Wi-Fi 6, which again will open up the 6 gigahertz band. And the whole time, as you say, we're finding more and more examples of Synology having that truncated access point that is convoluted, that is an absolute pain in the bum. And do you know what? It's almost, you almost touched on the next point that I was going to touch on, but you're so close, I'm going to crack on with it now. And this harks back to anyone that's followed any of my videos from about 4 or 5 years ago when I did an April Fool's video that really annoyed a lot of people, and I'm so sorry about that. But Thunderbolt 4/USB 4. Because the fact that most of these devices arrive with USB 3.2 Gen 1, so 5 gigabits per second, and Synology at the same time throttling the living life out of USB support on their devices, is made infinitely worse. Now, USB 4 is quite affordable, and it's almost a standard now on most 2021-2022 hardware. USB 4 just being everywhere right now because it's so much easier, and the technology and the protocol behind it, and with Thunderbolt 4 as well, trying to maintain with it with that 40 gigabits per second connection you've got there. It doesn't have to be for just localized drives. I think a lot of users would want to take advantage, if not for Thunderbolt related NAS in Thunderbolt 3 or 4, because if you're going to cater your solution to a lot of photo video editors, and you said yourself they don't really want to use a Thunderbolt to 10 GB adapters that gets really, really hot and throttles itself in no time at all. But the Thunderbolt, the USB 3.2 Gen 1 connection that we're seeing on all of Synology NASes is already a little bit of a slap in the face. But the fact that we've seen USB 3.2 Gen 2 at 10 gigabit and then USB 4 becoming relatively mainstream and affordable, Intel and its Thunderbolt ruling of the universe is coming to an end. And it seems weird that we have still not seen Synology budge on this. It's really, really bugging me. I'm sorry if for those of you watching, if the connection is intermittent. It's my fault. It's my office at the moment. But you know what? That was just a very quick rant on my part. I'm just going to hand it right back to you for your next point.
So for me, it involves the Synology required drives. And I'm going to get a lot of grief for this in comments because I am actually totally okay with the 8+ bay. So basically your 12 bays and above units having a requirement for Synology Drive. It's a lot softer than it was now, so you can still get it running and you still get your smart data and you're not a red volume anymore. And so it's essentially a hybrid. And for those levels of people, that makes sense. Once you're at that level, you're pretty much probably an enterprise. And if you're not, you're a home user who's going to hack together their own solution anyway. Mm-hmm. And so having the orange volume, it's annoying, but not a big deal. I'm actually okay with that. I get a lot of grief for that, but that's just how enterprise stuff works. It means you get a truly streamlined solution for businesses who just say, I need this to work. Money is cheap, manpower is expensive. Mm-hmm. If you can spend an extra $5,000 as a business to ensure that you do not lose one day of downtime because some weird thing happened and you do firmware updates for drives, and you get a streamlined solution for businesses, big businesses who are looking at those units like that, it actually makes sense. So I get a lot of grief for that. That makes sense. The one place where I absolutely do not agree is the NVMe restriction on the Synology new units.
Scribbling.
By having you to use a Synology M.2 NVMe to build a volume on all the 23 units, to actually build your own NVMe volume, that makes no sense. I'm fine with those restrictions in the large business sector because they're fine with it. They would rather spend the money for it. But in the Synology users who are actually going to be using this, that makes no sense. I'd be fine if it gave you a warning, and I'd be annoyed, but I'd be okay with it if it even did the same thing where like the volume was orange and said, hey, your data's at risk.
Yeah.
But no, they won't even let you do it from the UI at all. And that is way worse of a restriction, and that I cannot get behind. There is, at least from what I've heard from Synology, and they've had the same story for a long time about worry about overheating with these NVMEs. But let the users deal with that. Let the users say, you know what? I'm okay with the risk. I know the risk going ahead. I'm going to make sure I've got snapshots, backups, everything. Where if that volume dies, it's okay. But it drives me crazy, that restriction, especially with how expensive those NVMe drives are. And then they're still just linked to 3.1 speeds anyway, or 3x1.
Yeah. Again, 8, 9, 9.5 if you're lucky. But no, I was going to say that's pretty much was going to be my next point. But the only thing I would add on top of that, because I agree with 99% of what you're saying there, I would add on top of that, yes, when you reach an enterprise level, people are looking for a single ecosystem, one-go solution. That, having complementary first-party drives is up there with HP and your NetApps and stuff. But what I don't like is when you look at the compatibility list of products and then they go, here's all of our drives that are compatible up to 18 TB because Synology produce 18 TBs. I've tested 20 TBs. I've tested 22 TBs. They have tested them. They've just not added them. And that's what I don't like. Not just that the NVMEs, third-party NVMEs can't be used for pools, but they can be used for caching. What the flip? But it's the idea when it comes to the hard drive compatibility, even on the systems, like you say, even if I go down to something Billy basic, I go down to like a DS220J, that is your ham sandwich NAS, your entry point. Yes, I can put 18 TB drives in it apparently, but I can't put any higher than that. But I can put Synology 18 TBs inside that. It will make more noise than the apocalypse, but I can use them apparently. But no, do you know what? I'm down to my last 2 points, so I'm looking forward to this. What do you want to hear, hardware or software?
Software.
Software. Synology C2, our old friend. Here we are, back again. Synology C2, why isn't there a free area of storage for every single user? Now, I know there will be a lot of users that will argue with me on this, that this is a point where a lot, it's a cost to it. The business users, they want to take advantage of these. I think they opened up the new data center and that. But as far as procurement and getting people on board, I'm not saying it's like a drug dealer going, I'll give you a little first taste. But when I get a Google phone, I get a bunch of space included. When I bought my iPad, I got some space. You get space included as a little taste. And of course, they don't give you a lot. They give you 50, 100 gig if you're lucky. And a lot of the time, that arrives with after 2 years, we're taking this away, or we're going to reduce it to like 5 gig or something. And by then, you feel like that
Google
space.
Photos.
Yeah. So a lot of that data on those C2, on C2, I think, although they run trials aren't the same thing. If I hear trial, I hear I've got to register my payment information. Anything I put on there, I've got to get rid of. And if I have to cancel, otherwise it renews. That's what trial means to me as a consumer. They should include a tokenistic 25 gig, hell, 50 gigs, something, because that will be the core data. They already allow backup of your configuration and stuff like that with C2 accounts and stuff like that. It seems madness to me. They must have discussed it in some board meeting before they kicked someone out of a window, just to discuss it, that they should chuck in some free space. Because I know that's something people ask.
This is something I've not thought about at all, but I think that'd be a great idea, because 10 gigs, 25 gigs, that's free for Synology effectively. That's not going to cost them anything. And it really is that, like, me as somebody who could immediately in a first-time tutorial say, okay, by the way, get your free 25 gigs of data and go and put your tax documents in there, put your social, everything in there, backed up and encrypted. That would be a phenomenal selling point. And then I guarantee you would get a large amount of people, even if it's 25% of people moving on to the higher paid storages.
Of course.
That would be so easy of getting people in, and it doesn't cost them anything, especially if it's like, okay, per unit, they're already having to foot the bill for Quick Connect. They're already having to foot a lot of bills. It just makes sense that would be a great thing. I'd never even thought about that, but no, I absolutely think that, because so many people have a very small section of their data that is absolutely mission critical, where you really need to make sure you pay for the backup, everything. It'd be great to just say, listen, 25 gigs for all your important documents and your most important family photos, no brainer. And then we're like, I wish I could back that up. You just keep going up, up, up.
The literally priceless data, the photos of your child, the photos from your wedding, the stuff that can literally never be replaced. I mean, again, if Synology roll this out at the end of the year and they don't at least mention us, livid, absolutely livid. Over to you. What's your point? I've got one more after this, but you knock them out, mate.
All right. I got 3, so I'm going to do 2, and then we'll go back and forth on the last one.
Boss, let's roll.
Yeah. So this goes back into the Synology SSD caching, and it's actually the exact opposite of yours. I really wish they would undo whatever they did to flash cache. So Synology used to have a really, really, really fast, the ability to not only put random reads in the SSD cache, but also sequential reads. And that was absolutely phenomenal. So that was true in DSM-7, at least in the betas. And then somewhere along the way, I have no idea what update happened. It just goes and disappears out. And it was unbelievably fast. So back then, I tested the 1621 Plus. Great unit. Still absolutely recommend that thing. And what I was able to do is I had 2 hard drives in there, but I had 2 NVMe SSDs in there. And I was able to do 1.8 gigabytes per second reading off of them because I had everything in the cache. Unbelievably fast and phenomenal. And then all of a sudden it goes, poof. And now that's just not available. And now read caching is not nearly as useful as it was. It used to be unbelievable upgrade. Would recommend to everybody. Now it's like, I mean, it helps when the system's being hit hard, but yeah, it's kind of hit or miss now, which is unfortunate.
when I was running a lot of my tests here on YouTube, I used to do like the odd test every year and a half, looking at cache performance of repeating the same operation. And it was because I was running so many different setups of different drive and SSD combos. When I had noticed a drop, I had no consistent data to work on. But obviously, it sounds like you've had some consistent data to work with. I hadn't even realised that that had just sort of fallen by the wayside with that caching there. Read caching, for all of the priority that Synology have put behind it, it does seem to have fallen by the wayside ever so slightly. But I didn't realise it was that extensive in a lot of setup operations. I've not had a chance to look at that myself.
Yeah, and I mean, it was there was an update that actually went from phenomenal, this is great, to okay, this is hardly like so. Whenever you're recaching, you never really get the full story whenever you're doing a full sequential download. But then it just is not getting that full, and so you're artificially at a high hit rate because it's only look at random reads. But for something like a video editor, it'd be phenomenal to have that really, really, really low latency because you've got 2 terabytes of SSD caching, and it's all just in there, even though it's somewhat sequential reads. I do not know what changed on that because it was so useful back in the day, and now it's just gone. I'm fine if you want to have the default be against that, but turning it back on and at least having the option that was already there would have been so nice.
I mean, again,
The
that's
next
much.
one I
Oh, go ahead. Yep. Sorry.
the next one I had before we do our last ones is improve. And once again, this is one that is in the pipeline, is improving the Synology Drive indexing performance.
Ah, yes.
This is one that just goes clunk, 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 and it just slows everything down. If you have Drive enabled on even some of the more powerful units, you lose your sequential throughput when you're writing to the drive. You no longer, in some cases, can hit full 10 gig, even for something like the 1819 Plus. By just having that drive enabled on that folder, it's trying to index it, and it's just slowing everything down. And it can take days to build up the drive index. Apparently in DSM 7.2, it's going to be 10 times faster, they said, which to me, the only thing that could have happened there is they found that some intern left like, oh,
Yeah.
well, we were sleeping every time we checked.
Alan,
I have
would you
no idea
stop
why.
watching The Matrix? No, man. I know what you mean. It does wind me up. I think, sorry, before we get to our last point, I should add, once again, sorry for the drops occasionally in the recording pattern there for you guys watching at home. Again, this has been a long time setting up and we're beset with network problems, so bear with us. But it's worth highlighting, we didn't discuss what points we were going to make with one another on this. But our last point, we both agree, whatever last point we made was one that we were either particularly annoyed about or one that a lot of people had said to us. And you may have heard me talk about this before, guys. So again, you can fast forward if you want. I won't be offended. Where the hell is the Synology switch? Just where is it? You're talking to me about an ecosystem. You're talking to me about replacing the router, the hard drives, the SSDs, the cameras, doing all of that and not giving me a switch. It seems bizarre because switch technology, the technology behind switches, it's been around for a long time. Some might say it's been around since the internet. And I'm not suggesting that they should just, stick a label on a Netgear, go to Cisco and go, can we have that? I'm not suggesting it, but they rolled out the SG-1000, which was like a network kind of controller there, little network management box there. And they were going there, even had the software on board, NSM. They were really getting there, and that eventually became that router over there. And it still bugs me because, and I've tried my best not to talk about, obviously, the QNAP versus Synology debate. That's something for another video. But I do think Synology, for the most part, better software, better user experience, and that security record as well. But QNAP are clearing up when it comes to switches. They have not only gone into the market, they have opened it up significantly. And the people like Netgear, and even like for you in Europe, like Fritz and stuff like that, they've suddenly all gone, who are you? There's enormous range of switches there. They've brought a lot of that software on board there, and they've challenged a lot of these companies that have provided their switches that do not have user-friendly utilization and builds there. They do not have their kind of entry-level user in mind. And then they've brought these switches that have got the advanced intermediate tab. And that, I would have bet dollars to donuts, there you go, another reference, that it would have been Synology that did that. It seems bizarre to me I mean, have you ever heard anything about a Synology switch your side? Did you ever
I have
even
not.
see that SG-1000 mythical beast?
I remember seeing some of your early videos on just like some of those random ones, like, oh, that's going to be awesome. And then you go,
Yeah.
oh, and especially just now they're going into VLANs. It'd be so nice to have hey, look, this is everything on your network.
Mm.
Hey, look, this is a really easy to use interface. Hey, look, you can just do this real easy and just make it. It does not have to be that crazy powerful or anything, but do what Synology does best. And they sell decent hardware with a really good software that makes it very easy to use
Mm.
and interface with everything. That would be such a no-brainer to get into that final market where you can see everything. And they're finally going into VLANs and actually setting that all up. I would
Mm.
love to see that, especially if they did it right and it just guaranteed to work. That's the big advantage with these
Mm.
things, right?
And they've clearly thought about it, because a lot of their more recent SMB and high-profile releases have got that out-of-bounds kind of port on the Ethernets there on the rear. So they've clearly, there is, provisions for that kind of access there. And as you say, when it comes to the routers there, a lot of the work that's gone into SRM, they added VLANs, after about 8,000 years, and they added those features and services on there. So clearly they can see that demand there. And when you are running this entire operation in the same way their R&D division decided to go into cameras, they've got to have looked at the average office setup and gone, we can do that, we can do that, we can do that. Oh, not a switch, that's too tough. We can do that. It's infuriating. It's like a big open goal. And I'm going to stop. Over to you for your last point before I get a migraine.
For me, it is the solution to so many issues. And I really wish they would bring back the play models for Plex users. It the play models they had were just un I don't know if they were marketed wrong or they were pretty underpowered for
Mm.
everything but I love the transition to the AMD CPUs. The problem is, even if you do have the integrated GPUs on an AMD CPU, Plex does not support those.
Oh, and QuickSync as well, yeah.
So just bring back a play unit that's like, hey guys, if you want to do video editing, or not video editing, video streaming in
Yeah.
Plex, and you want hardware transcoding, this is your unit. We're going
Mm.
to give you all those pieces you want in there, and it's going to be a competitor to the 923 plus. It'd be the 920 play, 923 play. I don't
Mm.
know. It would be so nice to have that because there is a real section of the user base who wants that, who needs that, who that is what the NAS is to them. But having the AMD CPUs is so much better for the other 80% of users.
Of course, yeah.
It would be so nice to have that purpose-built unit that they can just throw out there and get it going and have an option for everybody rather than having to settle with, okay, well, I'm going to either have this or this and just be able to have the option for one of them.
Again, when I was debating points to put on my list, that was quite high on the things I was going to put on there. And I've mentioned this already on the channel before and a few times on Reddit. But the only reason I didn't include it is simply that I've heard bits and bobs about new series coming from Synology, and unfortunately not some of it from sources I can't really talk about without burning a source of information. But at the same time, there is another, if not plus series, then definitely a multimedia type series in the works. But unfortunately, confirmation on the hardware architecture is still yet to be seen. It's not that Realtek that we've seen, the RTD1619, that's sitting up there waiting to be reviewed. Stay tuned for that one. But no, that was the only reason it didn't make my list. But even then, it seems like the Play series on its own was always tailored, whether it was that 4-bay that was Intel or that 2-bay that was ARM based. At least it still had 4K transcoding native outside of Plex and that. It does seem like they've kind of not snubbed that marketplace, but I think I've mentioned this on other videos too. They've seemed to have taken their foot off the gas with Video Station and a lot of those multimedia apps. And it seems like they've gone, right, we've got this finite amount of resources and people, we can only channel them towards one thing. Why don't we channel them over there to make a switch? But no, you're bang on the banana there, and I'm sure there are a lot of people, some of people may have watched this video all the way to the end, wondering why no one has mentioned Plex yet. And luckily you said that, because the last thing I needed was death threats, frankly. But do you know what? I think we might have to wrap this up, because some of the, the 4 or 5 people that are left watching this, they've got homes to go to. But yeah, before we wrap this up, obviously we will, do this again maybe in a few months. We'll tackle another subject
That's
as well.
fun.
Thank you so much for coming on the channel. I mean, again, obviously people know how to find you. It's YouTube, but you know, you're doing this. This is it now. You know, this is your job. So why don't you tell more about that to these people?
Yeah, so I kind of accidentally started doing a consulting company, and so now I basically stand up videos or file servers for Synology, TrueNAS, pretty much whatever for anybody who needs to hire me. So yeah, I got a hire me page, spacerex.co/hire
That'll
me,
be linked below.
and yeah,
Yep.
I do it professionally now. And as you can see, I'm packing up the house, and we are moving and just like quit our jobs and doing it.
Well, that's not
Um,
absolutely
yeah,
terrifying at all. Jesus wept.
yeah, we're like, you know what? Let's just do it.
Oh man,
And
that
yeah,
is
it's honestly hobby that got out of control,
been
and it's
there.
been fun ever since.
Man alive, I know where you're coming from with the hobby that got out of control. One day they'll let me leave this room, and by them I mean Eddie. One day, one day I will see sunlight. One day. But no, let's wrap things up. Again, I'm sure there are things that we have not talked about, and you guys in the comments are going to list a whole bunch of others, and maybe we'll do a follow-up to this video where we go through the comments and the things that we didn't cover here for a future video. But thank you so much for watching, everyone. Again, like, subscribe, blah, 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 you know the rules. Free advice section link below over on NAS Compares, the big blue button on the right-hand side. The free community forum at Ask NAS Compares, you know, me, Eddie, other members of the NAS community answering your questions, and do visit the links to everything below over on SpaceRex's Hire Me page and over on NAS Compares as well. Once again, Will, thank you so much for joining us here, and hopefully we'll see you again very, very soon, and maybe Synology will send us an angry letter and tell us all the things we got right and wrong. We'll have to wait and see for that, won't we? But otherwise, thanks for joining us on the channel, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, it's a blast. Thank you.